For me, I really love reading scripture, and I'm always amazed because we could see as we read scripture, it's really divinely inspired. In our first reading today, Wisdom of Solomon was written centuries before the birth of Jesus Christ. And the author, we don't know the author. It's not King Solomon, although it was attributed to King Solomon. We don't know the author. And the author was not a prophet, and yet his words were prophesying towards the future. And it has to do with Jesus, right? In our first reading today, it says there, the ungodly says there, let us lie in wait for the righteous man, because he is inconvenient to us and opposes our actions. Could you hear the Pharisees and the scribes and the high priests saying this towards Jesus? Right? And they continue, he professes to have knowledge of God and calls himself a child of the Lord. He became to us a reproof of our thoughts. The very sight of him is a burden to us, because his manner of life is unlike that of others, and his ways are strange. It says there, let us test him and insult and torture, so that we may find out how gentle he is and make trial of his forbearance. Let us condemn him to a shameful death. They're pertaining to Jesus. That's why in our gospel today, Jesus couldn't go to Jerusalem because he's gonna be arrested and be put to death. The reason why the high priests, the scribes, and the Pharisees hated him, because he was counter-cultural. But he came, even with the threat of being put to death, he came to do the Father's will. In John chapter 6, verse 38, he says, for I have come down from heaven not to do my will, but to do the will of him who sent me. It poses a threat to the people, especially to the high priest. Now, the question that I would like to ask is this reading could also be pertained to us Christians? Are we living a counter-cultural Christian living? Instead of having resentment, we're striving to forgive others. Instead of having lust, we're striving for purity of heart, mind, and body. Instead of greed, we're striving for unselfishness and charity. Instead of wanting to dominate others, we strive to serve. Instead of pride, we strive for humility. Are we countercultural? Because if we're countercultural, we will also be persecuted, just like Jesus was persecuted. In John chapter 15, verse 20, Jesus said, the servant is no greater than his Lord. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. To obey the will of God is very challenging. I find it challenging, right? And it's not always easy to obey God. And not everyone will be able to understand us or even be pleased with us. That's why there will come a time wherein we will really be very persecuted, rejected, discriminated, put to prison, and even put to death. That's why if we're not being persecuted, we have to ask ourselves, are we living a countercultural life in this world? And I would like to end this homily with a question that we need to ask ourselves. If you were arrested for being a Catholic, would there be enough evidence to convict you?